Hey guys, Elliot here again from Farmwall, and today I'm going to take you through how to build your very own zero waste worm farm. So worm farming, similar to composting, is a great way to turn your food waste into rich fertilizer for the garden. Essentially what will happen is the worms will break down the food waste and turn it into rich worm castings and worm wee. It's not actually the worms wee, but we just call it that because it's kind of a funny name. The great thing about the worm farm we're building today is that it's zero waste, and we've sourced a lot of the materials locally for free, and some of them we've even diverted from landfill. So I'm just going to take you through the components you're going to need today to build your worm farm. So firstly, 4 polystyrene boxes. Now we sourced these from our local supermarket. All we did was call up and they have hundreds out the back and they'd be more than happy to help. Also, we're going to need around a bag of compost, a vessel to catch your worm wee, some newspaper, food scraps, and of course your worms. Oh, and you can't forget a watering can. So we're going to have 4 layers. The first box is just going to be a base that's going to provide elevation so we can drain out our worm wee. Now, second box is for drainage. It's so it can capture from the worm farm the worm wee that'll come off into here. And then I've added a small hole just in here, the bucket under there, and it'll capture. So your third layer is where the worms are going to live. Now I've poked a bunch of holes in the bottom of this box so that the worm juice can flow through, and essentially we're going to add newspaper, compost, newspaper, and then food scraps. So we're just going to start by putting down the newspaper. This will act as the worm's bedding at the bottom. You can really use any old newspaper, but we recommend using an independent quality journalism newspaper, so at least the worms have something good to read while they're there. Water in that first layer of newspaper. Now you're going to want to add your small layer of compost. This is going to give the worms something to sort of settle into. So now it's time to add our worms. So we're going to add them in with the compost, and we're going to get another layer on top before we add the food waste. If you're not sure what worms to use, tiger worms and red worms are a great place to start. If not, you can always consult your local nursery. Now we've got our worms and our compost in, we're going to put another layer of newspaper over the top, keep it nice and dark for them. Water this in. Now when adding your food scraps, the smaller pieces you break up, obviously the easier it's going to be for the worms to consume. You can put pretty much anything in here. If you can, try to avoid using citrus and onion. The worms don't really like it, but if a small amount gets in, it's not the end of the world. Watering in the waste after you've built the farm is important to keep it nice and moist. And you need to keep topping up the waste so that it keeps up the top, and eventually when you add the 4th layer, the worms are able to travel upwards. We're going to put a lid on it, keep it nice and dark and cool. Over the next couple of months, the worms are going to start to break down this food waste, turn it into castings and worm wee. Once that cycle's complete, we can add our 4th layer. So adding your 4th layer is the exact same as adding the 3rd layer. I'm going to perforate it so that the worms can eventually, once they've eaten all this food waste and turned it into castings, move up. So you're going to put down bedding, compost, your worms, another layer of newspaper, and then food scraps. And what will happen is there'll be rich castings in here, and your worms will come up looking for new food, and the worm farm will then be here. You then can put these castings into the garden, rotate it back up. This will become the new farm. It'll become worm castings, and the rotation will continue. So that wraps up making the worm farm. So make sure you rotate the 3rd and 4th layer and keep topping up the top one with food scraps. Once you get your worm juice and your worm castings, add them to the garden. Both of them are quite potent. The worm juice, you're going to want to go 10 cups of water to 1 cup of worm juice. And the castings you can use pretty sparingly, just a handful or so. But again, it is a really great fertilizer, and the worms do a really great job breaking down food waste in the garden. All right guys, so like we said before, making a worm farm like this is a great way to divert 4 polystyrene boxes from going to landfill. If everyone in the cohort did it, I think we'd save around 400 boxes. So if you make a worm farm, post in the Facebook group, and we can see how many we saved as a community. Once again, I'm Elliot from Farmwall, and I look forward to seeing your worm farms, and I'll catch you next time.